our society as a whole is so fixated on this concept of perfection, and I think oftentimes people wonder what it would be like if they could just pick and choose what they looked like or what they were good at and things like that. And while this may seem rather unrealistic, it's actually becoming a potential reality with breakthroughs in technological advances. Breakthroughs in genetics present us with both a predicament and a promise. The promise is that we may soon be able to treat and prevent a host of debilitating diseases, but the predicament is that our newfound genetic knowledge may also enable us to manipulate our own nature in the way that we were born naturally, to enhance our muscles, our memories, and moods, to choose the sex, the height, and other genetic traits of our children, and to make ourselves above average. Genetically engineering human DNA is extremely risky and unethical and should not be legalized, and more importantly, normalized in our society for three main reasons. Primarily, it is a potential danger in both the short term and the long term medically. Secondly, it's a crime against nature and it's dehumanizing. And finally, this concept of obsolescence, as time progresses and techniques further develop, just like any technology, particular methods will quickly become outdated. Diving further into my first point, that genetic engineering on human DNA is dangerous in both the short term and the long term. To manipulate the genetic makeup one is purposefully born with is extremely unpredictable and could result in serious side effects, health risks, and even death. One source that stood out to me was the University of Missouri School of Medicine. They had an article that I was reading on, and they made a good point that human traits typically cited for enhancement, such as intelligence, personality, or musical abilities, etc., are very complex and not only involve dozens, if not hundreds of genes, but are the result of complex mix of determinants, including nutrition, social and environmental factors, gene-to-gene interactions, and epigenetic switches that are outside the reductive chemistry of the DNA code. It goes beyond just like messing with some genes, and it's clearly very complicated. And it's kind of inevitable that while messing with these hundreds of genes in the human DNA, you're bound to create these unwanted mutations. Also, while trying to eliminate a disease or cancer, etc., it's common to create new diseases. And lastly, I think it's important to look on how this will affect the offspring of these genetically modified humans. Will this have a rippling effect on societies or on generations? If it affects one offspring, will that affect their offspring and their offspring, etc.? There was also a UK study done by Nat Biotechnol in 2018, and this showed large deletions and also complex rearrangements in the human DNA, and it re-emphasized this concept that it's just far too unpredictable and risky and should not be done on human beings. My second point is the argument of the ethical views of genetic engineering. Michael J. Sandel wrote an article in The Atlantic that stood out to me, and also Sheldon Krimsky wrote an article in Tufts Now, and both of those talked about how choosing a child's genetic makeup in advance, parents are denying a child's right to an open future. They talked about this concept of eliminating a child's open future. I think it's part of human nature to be born with different abilities and to be put into the world to discover those abilities and to see what you like, and trial and error become a unique individual. And by creating this person prior to them being born, you're kind of setting them up to just automatically get into this certain profession. According to this argument, genetic enhancements for musical talent or let's say athleticism would point children towards particular choices, and so designer children would never fully be free. My third point is that just like computers and other technology that become obsolete as new computers are created, the gene enhancement of one year could be outdated the next. So something you have to take into consideration is that how will older generations feel as new and improved generations are being created? Will they feel outdated? Will they feel discouraged? How do you compare genetically modified children to naturally born children, etc.? And my source, Xavier Simmons, with BioEdge, had a lot of quotes on the concept of obsolescence, and he quoted, "People whose enhancements have become obsolete may struggle to think that their outmoded and outdated genes as anything other than worse than the genes of people born after them. Perhaps most fundamentally, by rendering human beings subject to obsolescence, enhancement would transform our understanding of what it means to be human, such that we would come to understand ourselves as indeed, in an important sense, to be manufactured things to be improved upon in future iterations." I feel like also parents will start to look at their children, and parents' own values will imply that their child is inferior to children born subsequently with better enhancements, and siblings will automatically feel less capable than younger siblings because they're going to be more further advanced than they are. Overall, genetically enhancing human genes is medically dangerous in the short term and the long term. It's dehumanizing, and it presents a feeling of obsolescence. Because of these points, creating designer babies by genetically modifying human genetics is extremely unethical, and it's far too unpredictable and dangerous. The threat to the human population strongly outweighs the potential benefits, and by legalizing and further developing these techniques, we could be severely damaging our entire species. While these breakthroughs in genetics may seem rather promising and the possibilities are new and exciting, it's important to look at the bigger picture and to recognize the serious concerns and the potential destruction to our entire species. Thank you.